Saturday morning, welcome to the Krueger Show. Peacock in the house. Looking forward to this one. We're going to get going right here. Can the Niners beat the Packers with Brandon Allen? All right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show bright and early on a Saturday morning. We're off and running. Brian Peacock in the house from Locked On 49ers, one of our favorites. And we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. They're open today. Stop by from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And we're also brought to you by Better. That's right. This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. We have won 5 times already this year. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners, and you get your first deposit matched up to $200. And everyone who does is automatically entered to win a free signed Fred Warner jersey. We'll announce the winner at the end of November. Kev, are you going to flash the jersey up there for everybody to see? There we go. Look at that thing. Thing of beauty. Nice. It's an XL. It's a red 54. It's signed on the 4. It's sitting right next to me. And there's a picture of it. So everybody who signs up automatically is entered into a drawing to win a free signed Fred Warner jersey. As I said, we'll announce the winner at the end of November. It is almost the end of November. And once again, thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, we're off and running. Big Saturday. You'll catch me on the leader today at 10 a.m. on 680 on the AM dial, 104.5 on the FM dial for 49er forecast. And we're going to have a guest from Green Bay, and we'll also have a mystery caller for some of you old school Niner fans. So tune in for that at 10 o'clock today on KMBR. But between now and then, we got a lot of Niners to talk about with Brian Peacock, who does an amazing job. Him and Eric Crocker do Locked On 49ers. If you're not signed up yet, you need to be signed up. They do great content every single day on the Niners. It's very convenient, and he's with us here. I almost said, I've been doing so much radio this week, I almost said on the UMA guest line, but it's not the UMA guest line. It's just the Krug Show. Peacock, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, I'm with you. You get tongue-tied and you're talking about this show, and half the time I'm like, Locked On 49ers. Oh, no, wait, this is my other channel, OT with BP. Oh, no, this is the Peacock and Williamson show. And when you got your hand in so many pots and doing so many shows, it's hard to keep it all straight. But I'm pumped to be on the Larry Krueger show today, talking ball with you. It's always fun.
Man, we had a great stream. I think it went out. It went so long. We were talking about draft prospects. I think that was the last time we got together. The 49ers had a phenomenal draft. Maybe we'll get into that at some point, but why don't we hit the headline that's out there, which is that yesterday Kyle Shanahan told us that Brock Purdy's not going to start. It's going to be Brandon Allen. And I had a chance to talk to him in the auditorium. And, I really like Brandon Allen. I think he's going to play better than people think. I know there's a lot of people that wanted Josh Dobbs. There's a lot of people that are like, I personally, if you ask me, I'd rather see Tanner Mordecai. I would. I really think Tanner Mordecai has bigger talent than Dobbs or Allen, but that's a different discussion. I didn't expect them to go with Tanner Mordecai. I did expect them to go with Brandon Allen, and I don't think a lot of people did, because I don't think people see the quarterback backup as Shanahan does, but he has been firmly in the Brandon Allen camp since the beginning of camp. And I understand what he meant, because I thought Brandon Allen looked sharper in the practices, but maybe Dobbs looked a little bit better in the preseason games once they got rolling. What do you think? What did you think of the decision to promote Brandon Allen to the starter spot for Sunday, and was it the right call?
Yeah, I thought exactly what you thought as far as what it looked like in camp, what it looked like in preseason, and not surprised at all. Josh Dobbs has been the inactive emergency QB3, and Brandon Allen's been the backup. So I'm not surprised that, they just all went up one spot with Brock Purdy not able to play in this game. But I thought, and look, I only go to a couple of training camp practices a year. I don't cover the team as closely on the beat and watch every practice and, every bit I can. But I watched these guys in college. I watched these guys in NFL. I've watched all the preseason games and, a few camp practices. And I thought Brandon Allen looked better than, I agree with Kyle Shanahan. I thought Brandon Allen looked sharper in those training camp practices than Joshua Dobbs. And Dobbs might give you a little more dynamic athletic ability. And he probably looked better in the preseason game than he did at practice. But we know that Kyle Shanahan, it's all about knowing where to go with the football and timing. And I think that's where Brandon Allen wins out over Joshua Dobbs in Kyle Shanahan's mind. And, Joshua Dobbs can make a few more plays with his legs, but let's not pretend he's, Lamar Jackson out there. He's not so dynamically athletic and have some huge arm where he gives you this massive advantage over the other team because of how athletic he is and how much more dynamic he is than Brandon Allen. And yeah, he's more athletic, but I was actually impressed with Brandon Allen's arm because I remember him being a noodle-armed backup quarterback and being a guy in the draft where it's like, maybe a day 3 scrappy guy that can carve out a long career as a backup quarterback, which is exactly what has happened for Brandon Allen. But in training camp, I was actually thought, you brought up Tanner Mordecai, I thought 17 in camp this year must have been Mordecai because I thought Allen was slinging the ball a little bit better than I expected from his arm. And previously, Brandon Allen had been wearing number 4 in camp. And this year, it's Mordecai with number 4. So I saw all the quarterbacks warming up far away, and I thought, oh, man, okay, 17 must be Mordecai, and 4 must still be Brandon Allen. And I saw 17 get all these reps, and he was slinging it pretty well. I was like, man, there's something with this Mordecai. And then I realized later, oh, man, that's Brandon Allen is wearing number 17, and Tanner Mordecai got so few reps. So I don't know what to expect from Tanner Mordecai. But Brandon Allen, I was more impressed with him in training camp practices than I thought, and I think it's probably more about floor than ceiling for Kyle Shanahan, being able to trust a guy that's been in the system for a couple years to make the right reads and get the ball out quick.
Here is a little bit of Allen from the presser yesterday. I asked him a question about preparation, and he gave a real long answer here. This is almost a minute long. Listen to Brandon Allen from the presser yesterday.
Is there anything you've been able to take away from Brock as far as the way he prepares that helps you? I know you work behind Burrow, but I know Darnold cited Brock's preparation last year.
Yeah, no, he's unbelievable the way he prepares, and you kind of have to be able to execute this offense well. And there's a lot of motions, a lot of shifts, a lot of things that go into it, and to be on top of all that, and you've seen him on the road doing all that with silent cadence and all that. So there's a lot that goes into it, and his preparation kind of was when I first got here last year watching him do it, I was like, okay, this is kind of how you have to study here because you can go other places and offenses aren't as complex, aren't as difficult. So you can still study, but you're looking at the same things week to week. But in this offense, we really do a good job moving guys around and getting guys open. So there's a lot of studying that goes into it. So watching him prepare and the way he does, I've definitely tried to model my preparation after him.
Good long answer, very thoughtful answer. It's funny. Last year he's the 3, now he's the 2. A lot of people wanted Dobbs to start this game, and I understand why Shanahan went with Allen. I don't know. I mean, it's football, but Shanahan's system does seem to be a bit more complex. I mean, Matt Ryan went from just a decent first year to the MVP of the league in the second year. We saw even Jimmy G make significant strides after being in the offense for over a year. I don't know. It just seems to me that Kyle favors Allen here just simply because he was a little bit more, in tune with his offense. He's been in the offense a little longer. I think, though, listening to Lynch on KMBR on Friday, Brian, that there's a very good chance we're going to see both. I mean, he was asked about, the game, and he's like, well, Brandon Allen's going to get the first snaps. He didn't say he's getting the start this week or he's our guy. We're behind him this week. It was like he's getting the first snaps, like only committing really the opening series. And if he looks bad, you're going to see Josh Dobbs. That's the way I heard it. We'll see. I think there's a very good chance we see both on Sunday. What do you think?
Yeah, and you can flip to Dobbs very easily. And it's all hands on deck. You got to win a football game. You're back against the wall for the San Francisco 49ers. So if Allen's not moving the football, let's go see what Dobbs. I think it's close enough, and it's probably close enough for Kyle Shanahan that, whatever helps you win a football game, you've got to do that. And maybe it's bringing in Dobbs for a few snaps and getting an athletic quarterback in there for a play or two, like we saw with the Steelers on Thursday night and getting Justin Fields some reps. Do you go that route? It's funny because John Lynch on KBR has said some things that didn't happen in the games either. I remember he's like, "Oh, Jacob Cowing's probably going to get some great opportunities in this game," and Cowing never snipped the field a few weeks ago in that very same weekly KBR hit from John Lynch. So who knows if John Lynch is on the same page with Kyle Shanahan there, or maybe they're just being coy, and there might have been some coy gamesmanship this week just to not allow the Packers to prepare for who was going to be the quarterback out there. But there's, to be honest with you, Larry, in this game against the Packers, the situation the 49ers are in right now, without Bosa, without Brock Purdy, I mean, anything could happen. I have no idea what to expect from this football team, to be honest with you.
Well, and one other thing that John said was that I was kind of like, really? I mean, he came out very strong in the interview and said the offensive line's playing very well. And, and I'm thinking, are you talking about the Niner offensive line? I mean, which offensive line are we talking about here? Because the offensive line that I see has got Jake Brendel rated 48th out of 48 centers as a pass blocker. The offensive line I see, Colton McKivitz is getting beat by, for sacks and pressures seemingly every week. The offensive line I see is Aaron Banks seems like he's getting out-quicked to certain spots in the middle, and they're not running the ball effectively. But John seems to think the offensive line is playing well. Now mix in the fact that Trent Williams, couldn't walk last week, took a shot, got out there and played. Do you think he does another toward-all shot and gets out there and plays again? Or do you think that it catches up with him this week and it's Jalen Moore time at left tackle?
Oh, man. I think Jalen Moore is probably better than we give him credit for as being someone who can come in and play some left tackle for the 49ers. But clearly he's not Trent Williams, and he's not even Trent Williams on one leg. I don't know. Most NFL players, if it's a pain tolerance thing and they can get a shot and go play, they go play, which is also what tells me there's some structural stuff in here with Brock Purdy. And they didn't, the MRI stuff was interesting with Purdy this week too, Larry, because they're like, oh, we were okay with what the MRI showed. They weren't like, oh, he was negative and he's clear on the MRI. So maybe there was just like, well, there's still one thread hanging on in Brock's shoulder, but the fact that he can't play and that Toradol can't get you there, that tells me that there's structurally something going on in potentially really bad with that shoulder. And for Trent, he's going to go if he can. And for Kittle, he's going to go if he can. I just think that's the way it is in the NFL. So unless they legitimately can't go and they can't pump themselves with enough whatever they need to pregame to get out there, then they're going to be out there.
What's your level of concern if it is Jalen Moore? I mean, he's played a lot. I talked to him in the locker room this week. He's definitely not one of these guys that's like nervous and worried. He's just not that kind of a guy. He's pretty calm. He's been in the league a while. It's not his first rodeo. He's done all the practicing. He's gotten all the practice reps for the most part the last couple of weeks because Trent's been hobbled on that ankle. What do you think if Jalen Moore's got to go? Rashawn Gary's on one side. He's 280 with long arms and great speed. You got Lucas Van Ness on the other side. Not as dynamic, but definitely a hardworking guy with some moves. How do you see the matchup outside the offensive tackle, defensive end breakdown if it's Jalen Moore?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Moore, he's practiced once a week for the 49ers throughout the last couple of years because Trent Williams is always getting days off and veteran rest. So he's gotten a lot of reps in practice. And again, I don't think he's a turnstile at left tackle. I think he can hold his own. I think he can compete. I think the 49ers have done a good job of bringing in, smart, tough football players that at least compete up front. So I don't think they're going to be a disaster up front, but the ceiling starts to fall a little bit. Obviously without Trent Williams out there, and then the floor starts to fall a little bit as well. And that's a little bit worrisome because I think the 49ers are just barely hanging on and playing good enough up front to not be a disaster. And when you consider the other side of the football, if you start losing games on both lines of scrimmage, Larry, that's a recipe for disaster in the NFL. And that's where I would start to worry about the 49ers because they've been so good up front, especially with the dominating defensive line throughout really since 2019, right? Throughout the tenure. And that was what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch set out to do from jump. This is probably one of the least powerhouse defensive lines the 49ers have put out there. That's with Bosa. And you look at the offensive line, and Trent Williams, even at his best, is starting to show some signs of age. And, part of it's probably the ankle as well. Brendel seems to be getting worse and regressed this year at center, particularly as a pass protector. I know Chris Furster, the offensive line coach, talked about why he's the best option at center and his ability to get out and get on the second level and block guys. And, he's a pretty athletic player, but thank God Pooney showed up and has been a rock at right guard, because McKivitz is McKivitz. You're kind of you're hanging on. You're barely hanging on, and you're getting pretty close to disaster if you start losing rep after rep on both sides of the football on the lines, because that's where it all starts, Larry.
It's interesting. Let's talk about Nick Bosa, because Bosa can't go. He's got the oblique. He's got a hip injury. He could barely get up on the stage after the game last week. I'd be shocked if he plays against Buffalo. And he's obviously huge for the 49ers. You saw the numbers when he was in there. They're giving up 3 yards a play. When he was out of there, they're giving up 6.1 yards a play. So he means a ton. But I was looking at some of the stats as far as Bosa this year. Guess how many sacks Bosa has in the fourth quarter of the Niners' 5 losses this year?
0. Yeah.
None. The Niners themselves as a team only have 3 sacks in their 5 losses in the fourth quarter. Or maybe 5, no, I should say 4. 2 against Minnesota, 1 against LA, 1 against Seattle, none against Arizona, none against Kansas City. If you can't blow teams out, you got to get the quarterback down. Hurries are nice, pressures are nice, but you got to hit the quarterback. And they're just not doing it. They're just not hitting the quarterback. So what do you think? I mean, what are we going to see this week? Because there's not going to be Nick Bosa. I think that's pretty obvious. We're going to see Yatir Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd starting. But that also means that Robert Beal's going to have to play more. Sam O's going to have to play more. And it really means that Nick Sorensen is probably going to have to change his entire I don't blitz mindset. The Niners blitz 13% of the time, and he's going to have to do something that he has not done this year for the most part, and that's dial up a creative array of blitz packages and throw them at Jordan Love. Does Sorensen have it in him? What do you think? How concerned should we be that there's no Nick Bosa in this game? Is there any way that Sorensen will be able to create pressure in this game?
A huge concern for me. And yes, Sorensen can create pressure. You can bring the blitz, you can bring more players than they have to block, but then it makes you susceptible on the back end. And, how much do you, it's going to put a lot of pressure on those young safeties. You got a rookie safety out there, Malik Mustafa, second-year guy in Jair Brown, and you're going to make them susceptible. And we saw last week with Christian Watson has 4 catches for 150 yards. Like, he could split those safeties on a post real quick, and Jordan Love can put it out there and find him. But Jordan Love's also susceptible to making some mistakes. And that was our number one key to victory for the 49ers this week, aside from, having enough players to field a competent football team and not throw a preseason team out there. Those turnovers, Jordan Love will throw the ball to the other team. You've got to create pressure any way you can to make him make mistakes. And if he does throw it to you, you've got to catch it, and you got to create some turnovers. And I think that's one of the main paths to victory for the 49ers. They are going to have to blitz. They're going to have to create pressure, and it's going to put some pressure on the young secondary. You got a rookie cornerback out there. You got a rookie safety out there. You got a second-year safety out there. Deontay Lenoir has obviously been rock solid, but Isaac Adams is going to come in there when they spread it out with 3 wide receivers. To be honest with you, Larry, Bosa, I think, is the most important player on the 49ers team. And in the offseason, we go through a lot of scenarios and podcasts and, talking heads on TV. And there's always a lot of angles to talk about football. And I remember there was a segment on Good Morning Football. And it's not a show I watch a lot, but, they have a little bit too much energy. The morning show thing is just like, how do people get up and get that jacked up in the morning? Like, what substance do you have? It's caffeine's not enough. The question was, who's the most important player? Let's rank them 1 through 5. And everyone's like, oh, Christian McCaffrey's 1, and then it's Trent Williams, and then it's Nick Bosa's the most important player on the 49ers. I would play a season without McCaffrey.
Brian, we're having a mic issue. It looks like your mic's kind of crackling. The people in the chat, Alex is saying the audio is a little janky. Brian's audio got a little crackly. Just in the last answer here, lots of static. I don't know if there's a way to go out and come back in. Maybe there's a way to.
Sure.
See if we can. I don't know. Have you had any crackling on the mic before?
I've not had crackling, and I don't hear anything, but I'll go out and come back in.
I definitely hear it. I guess the people in the chat hear it. So if you could maybe pop out and pop back in, maybe just hit a little reset on that.
Yep,
we can. Yeah, some of these things happen sometimes when you're streaming. You'll get like an audio patch or something where it crackles or something. But yeah, I still hear it, but I'm not sure why.
I'll be right back. Let's see if we fix that.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me put you I'll put you in the green room for a sec, and then maybe that will help. Yeah, I don't hear. Well, do you guys hear it on this mic? I don't hear it on this mic, so I definitely think it was on that mic. Someone said replug the wire, check the connection. Yeah. Do you guys hear crackling anymore? I'm just looking at the chat. Deez says that helped. If it was just nothing, yeah. Adrian Gutierrez says, no, it's not on your end. Kyle McKiernan says, Larry, you're good. Kevin says, not our Kevin. He says, thanks. I almost thought it was my $300 headphones. Yeah. Daniel says, check the wire. Yeah. Yeah, and D says no crackling right now. Yeah, it was definitely Peacock's mic there, but I'm not sure why. Mr. Treasy, they're trying to silence Krug. I will never be silenced. You cannot silence me. You cannot silence me. Brian, how you back? Now you're off. We don't hear you at all. You muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Muted, and how does that
crackling be gone?
Hey,
look at that.
Right.
Look at that. Good job. Right. These things, sometimes that's the way it shakes out. I think this is a major part of the game. Can Sorensen dial up pressures? There have been people who watch film for a living who have evaluated the 49ers and said that their blitz packages are relatively simple and that they're not really, that this is not Sorensen's strength. So I'm going to be really eager to see, does he know, can he dial up some blitzes? Where does he send them from? I'll say this. I was not impressed last week. The 49ers were, really dragging in the fourth quarter. Yatir Gross-Matos was absolutely cooked. And I credit Nick for understanding that he had to send somebody else at the quarterback because the DNs were gassed. So the second to last play of the game, he sends Demo off the edge, and he dropped Campbell into the flat against JSN, and Campbell can't cover Jackson Smith and the Jigba. If he was five people, he couldn't cover him. I mean, he can't cover him, and he didn't cover him. It was an easy pitch and catch to Jackson Smith and the Jigba in the flat. And then Campbell came roaring up at the end and missed the tackle after that. I mean, to me, it's just, that I wanted to see them dial up some pressure, but I didn't want to see them ISO Campbell against, their hottest receiver. And that's exactly what happened. And of course, Campbell had no resistance. Let's talk about Kyle Shanahan for a second. A lot of people are jumping off the Kyle Shanahan bandwagon. I'm sure you and Croc probably seeing the same kinds of comments that I see when the Niners lose, which is, Shanahan's a choker. Shanahan, get rid of Shanahan. Everybody wants to get rid of Shanahan. And I only listen to the people who say, get rid of Shanahan and get this guy. If you just say, get rid of Shanahan, it's just no. I don't pay it any mind. I don't look at it. I don't pay it any attention. If you say, get rid of Shanahan and hire Matt Campbell, or get rid of Shanahan and hire, whomever, Sean McVay. I mean, if you have somebody that you're advocating, I'll at least give it some thought. I don't know where you are. I am more pro Shanahan. I believe that Shanahan's a top tier coach. To me, he's Andy Reid in Philly. And Andy Reid, of course, had another chapter in Kansas City, So anyway, I'm not in favor of getting rid of Shanahan, but at the same time, I'm not blind to the fact that there's issues. I don't think he's the best at accepting blame. I think he'd be far more effective. And if I was Corey Rush, I would say to Kyle, hey, Kyle, 4, 5, 6 times a year, we just got to go to the podium and just be like, hey, look, it's on me. It's on me. Now, don't do it Dan Campbell-esque where every single presser's like, it's on me. It's everything's on, that there's a little grandstanding and there's a little, lack of genuine behavior there with some of these coaches. You can't be repetitive like, Mike Singletary. Well, I just have to, Mike, what'd you have for breakfast? I need to watch the film. It's like, Mike, what are you doing on Christmas morning? I need to watch the film. After a while, you're like, well, wait a second. Did you listen to my question? I need to watch the film. So you have to be genuine in your answers. But I think Kyle could accept a little bit more blame. I think he could run the ball a little bit more. I think he gets pass happy in certain situations. I think he's a little bit old school, a little too much old school when it comes to managing the game. I think the Super Bowl is a classic example. 3rd and 4, Kyle Shanahan's thinking, I've got one pass play and then I'm kicking the field goal. And Sirianni and the kind of the modern day, analytics driven head coach is like, I'm running it to get to 4th and 1, and then I'm quarterback sneaking it. And I just don't think that's in his mindset at all. So I do think there needs to be some adjustment there from the old school thinking to a little bit more of the new school as far as in-game management of, the plays. But I think he's a genius play caller, play schemer, play sequencer. Where are you with Shanahan? What do you say to the people who call your guys' show and are like, fire this guy?
Yeah, the fire Shanahan thing, I've seen that after every loss, somebody says fire Shanahan, and they get frustrated by the way he manages a game. I do think there's something to it. And to be honest with Kyle needs to take his own advice. We've heard Kyle use the quote, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. I think Kyle does need to take a look in the mirror. I think he needs to improve. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he gets snapped up in 2 seconds, as people mentioned. There's some really bad options. If you go to the free agent market at head coach, you can end up with a bad coach. Even guys like Ben Johnson, some coaches are better coordinators than they are head coach. Do we know that Ben Johnson is going to be a phenomenal head coach? Would the best head coaches and candidates around the league want to take a job where you're going to fire a guy who's been to the NFC Championship game 4 out of 5 years because he's 500? You know what I mean? So that doesn't say stability about an organization to just fire a guy as soon as. So I think it's insane. I don't think that's even on the minds of 49ers ownership, and there's no way Kyle Shanahan's getting fired. So I think we should get that thought out of our heads right now. But I think Kyle Shanahan can get better. And I had Aaron Schatz on the Peacock and Williamson show earlier this week on Tuesday. It was a really cool episode. And he's the inventor of, he's the godfather of modern analytics, the former ESPN guy. He invented the DVOA statistic, which is a phenomenal statistic in the NFL to look at the game and try to decipher who's playing well and who's not. And the Niners right now at 500 are number 6 in DVOA. They're good on both sides of the ball. PFF had the Niners, I think, at 4 in their power rankings as far as grades go. And John Lynch, when he was talking about the offensive line, he said, yeah, I don't always agree with PFF, but they like our line. So I agree with them right now about our offensive line. And so the Niners are kind of playing under what the statistics say they should be. They're underperforming right now. And Aaron Schatz had something interesting to say. He said there's a coach in Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin who always overperforms what the statistics say his team should be. And Kyle Shanahan, even when they're really good, underperform what it's the DVOA and what the underlying stats say that they should be. And I think that's true about Kyle Shanahan, whether it's game management, whether it's sometimes, not being aggressive, being too aggressive. I think that we've seen really good defensive coordinators like Steve Spagnuolo in the Super Bowl twice. We've seen him this year against the Chiefs, this year against Brian Flores. The really good defensive coordinators around the league have a better chance against Shanahan because they're able to use his rules against him more, whether it's how he protects his quarterbacks. And you talk about the blitz game for the 49ers on defense. The 49ers aren't as good as blitzing or picking up the blitz on either side of the ball as a lot of other teams are. in the NFL. And by the way, Sorensen better be careful, because that's what got the last defensive coordinator's ass fired, was the zero blitz at the wrong time, right? So as far as Kyle Shanahan goes, I think it's insane to start talking about firing a guy at 500 after the success the 49ers have had and what they've built here. But I do think it's fair to point to Kyle Shanahan and say, you can continue to evolve. You can continue to get better as a coach. And I'll say this about the 49ers, and this started to happen last week against the Seahawks, Larry. You can lose some games and you can stumble a little bit here and there, but don't give us boring on top of it. I'm watching that Seahawks game and I'm like, I don't expect that the 49ers are going to make a big play right now. Like, I would be shocked if the 49ers made a big play right now, whether it's yak, whether it's a deep play down the field, whether it's a pop and a big run. There was no chance the Niners were going to go make a big play at the end of that game. And then the Sunday night game comes on, and you see Burrow throwing bombs to T. Higgins down the post, and you see like not even close to as good of weapons as the 49ers have. You see Herbert slinging the ball around, and it's a laser show out there. And it's like, wow, this is different football right now than what I saw with the 49ers game. And it's been my big problem with the San Francisco Giants, who I know you talk about a lot, Larry. Don't be boring on top of being bad. And that's where I worry about the Niners right now, because they're a little old, they're a little slow, and don't start to give me boring out there on top of giving me a team that's not winning football games.
Well, I mean, some people try to push back, but I mean, on the separation stats that my kid put out there on Twitter this week, but I definitely think there's something to it. I mean, the average separation, every Niner receiver that they have is lower than the average separation in the league. They don't have a lot of speed. Juwan Jennings is doing an incredible job. The last 2 games, he's got a 35.5% target share with guys being out. He's carrying them, but he doesn't run fast. And Debo at this point doesn't run fast. And, Pearsall's getting no separation, and Cowing's now concussed, and Ayuk's out for the year. You're right. There was no hope at all for them to get a big chunk yardage play. They don't have explosive capability. I mean, I want to see Garendo out there. I want to see Mason out there. I asked Shanahan this week, I'm like, can we see Garendo and CMC? Can we see CMC and Mason? And he kind of spoofed me and was like, well, you mean 2 running backs at one time? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, yeah, we can do that. We've done that. It's like, well, why? What are you waiting for? Garendo, if all you did was put Garendo out wide and ran him on go patterns the entire day, he'd have far greater value than he has standing on the sideline doing absolutely nothing. You don't have that many guys that can run. You got hardly anybody on your entire team that can run sub 4.4. You do happen to have this guy, and he's had a couple good weeks. You bring CMC back and you just shelve him. You take your game breaker and you're like, you know what? We won't use him to break the game open. He's never going to break the game open on the sideline. I guarantee you that. I don't get their usage of Mason and Garendo the last 2 weeks. And why don't we hit the elephant in the room, which is the Niners were a better EPA per rush team before McCaffrey got healthy. The last 2 weeks, they've dropped from 10 to 21 in the league since McCaffrey has gotten healthy. What gives? Is McCaffrey not McCaffrey anymore? Or are teams defending the Niners differently since he arrived? Because they're not nearly as good of a running team since he's been back.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things. Clearly, Christian McCaffrey's not 100%. And before I got all crackly earlier, that was kind of my point is McCaffrey, as good as he is, he's still a running back, and the 49ers run the ball fine. Like, Christian McCaffrey coming back wasn't going to just Band-Aid everything. And I think there was some expectation that McCaffrey comes back, everything's fixed. They're going to be better running the ball. They're going to be better throwing the ball. They're going to be amazing in the red zone. And that clearly hasn't happened. And I don't think we should expect that to happen. And I don't know if we should expect Christian McCaffrey to practice much all year and to ever be quite 100% with what he's dealing with. And he's, to be honest with you, he can start collecting Social Security at his age, right? As a running back in the NFL. That's the reality of the situation. You're 28, 29 years old. You're running back in the NFL. The cliff is coming. Now, I think Christian McCaffrey can play a lot longer than some other running backs because he's so good in the passing game. But you're talking about a guy who needs to share the rock a little bit and be more of a third down style back. Use him more as a wide receiver. Maybe use him more of a wide back and maybe post Debo Samuel era. Maybe that's what we'll see. But Croc and I were joking when we set the over-under when Christian McCaffrey came back in his first game. We knew Kyle Shanahan's going to lean on him, and he always, if your guy's healthy, his number one back, he's the ultimate, like, you can start that guy in fantasy because he's going to take every snap, and that's what it's been for Christian McCaffrey. And we were kind of joking because, like, well, McCaffrey's coming off this big Achilles injury. Let's put the over-under on Jordan Mason carries really low as a joke. What do you say? 1.5 carries for Jordan Mason in Christian McCaffrey's first game back? Under. Yeah. It was 1 carry for Jordan Mason in the first game back after all that with the Achilles for Christian McCaffrey. And he's clearly not 100%. So you got to get some fresh legs in there because you need more explosive plays. And whether Debo because I've seen Debo, he's not quite he's still got some explosiveness. And I feel like he's just kind of like that one fingernail tackle away a few times of breaking some bigger runs. The Niners definitely need some chunk yardage in this game.
No question about it. And Garendo seems like a great way to get it. Let's talk Purdy for a second. I love Greg Cosell. He's on the Ross Tucker podcast. He's one of my go-tos, and he had an interesting observation on Purdy. Here's what Cosell had to say about Brock Purdy.
Obviously, I watch the Niners every week, and I know that Kyle Shanahan has talked about the fact that there's nothing wrong with Brock Purdy, and again, he certainly knows more than I do. But just watching the tape, that's all I can do. And again, I don't know how they coach him, so I'm just telling you what I see on tape and what I think based on what I see. I think that Purdy is just, for whatever reason, the innate and refined and nuanced sense of timing and anticipation that has been really a foundation of his game since he became a starter 2 years ago is not quite at the same level this year. Now, I don't know if he's not confident in his receivers. I don't know the reason, but I just feel like that there's throws that are there that we've seen him make that he's not turning it loose. And again, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But that's what I see. And I feel like he's just not as comfortable. I feel like he's been leaving the pocket at times unnecessarily. I just don't see him playing with the same level of comfort and timing and anticipation. And as you know, Ross, that has to be his game because he's not a power thrower. Obviously.
So there you go. Greg's not seeing the same Brock as we saw a year ago. He says he doesn't look as comfortable, that he leaves the pocket when he doesn't need to leave the pocket. I thought Kansas City clearly sped Brock up. His overall clock may be sped up a little bit just from the standpoint of he's had to run to kind of preserve plays and save his own bacon this year at times. Ayuk was his best number one guy last year. Ayuk showed up this year, held out, and then was a shadow of what he was a year ago, and then got hurt. That could have a huge impact. What are you seeing with Purdy, and what do you think of Greg's eval there?
I'm definitely not going to be the guy to disagree with Greg because I think he's one of the best at doing that, and he's right because I think there's a couple of things that I can point to for Brock. One is, and it's fascinating because what have we said about Kyle Shanahan's offense and Brock Purdy in the past? We need bigger plays. Let's throw the ball down the field a little bit more. So what does Brock Purdy do this year? He holds on the ball a little bit longer, a little bit more aggressive, throw more balls down the field. And we're like, wait, don't like that. Let's bring the yak back. Let's get the ball out quicker and in timing. And so I think that's kind of a funny aspect of it with the Kyle Shanahan offense and Brock Purdy. But I think part of it is just Brock being aggressive. I think he's an aggressive guy. He's a gutsy player, and I think he's trying too hard. He's putting it on him. It's his third year in the league. He's trying to make plays. He's trying to be the guy. And so I think he is passing up some easier throws. And I think the other thing that's happening ties into what we just talked about with Kyle Shanahan. And I think it's a copycat league, and teams are seeing how good defenses and good defensive coordinators are playing against Kyle Shanahan. And so they're trying to do the same thing. And they're using the 49ers protection rules against them. And Brock Purdy's getting a little bit more pressure. And Brock Purdy's a little bit less comfortable in the pocket because of those things. And I think you put all that together and it's exactly what we're seeing. In some games, it looks awesome. And Brock Purdy's making tons of plays. And sometimes with Kyle Shanahan's offense, when it is not really firing on all cylinders, Kyle's offense looks really just clustered up, and it looks like there's too many people in an elevator. And so that's kind of what I've seen from this offense with Brock Purdy this year. And I think Brock Purdy's still been playing at a pretty high level, but I do think that Brock Purdy's strengths and Kyle Shanahan's strengths And the strengths of this roster now, especially without Brandon Ayuk, get the ball out quick, and we need the Yak Bros to show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I watched Ben Johnson and the play calls that he has in the red zone for Detroit, and I think they're incredibly creative. But then I also look up, and there's Jahmyr Gibbs and there's Jamison Williams, and those guys move incredibly well. The Niners don't have guys like that for the most part. I mean, they don't have their Gibbs. They definitely don't have their Jamison Williams. And so they don't have the same ability to create space. They also don't have Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, 3 number ones on their offensive line. So they can't run it as well as the Lions run it in the red zone. But I also think that Johnson's a little bit, I love his play calls. I love the creativity. I love the space creation that he can come up with in some of these designs. Give me a lineup change that you would like to see that we, that we didn't see last week that you want to see this week. Is there anybody that you're like, you know what, bench this guy and play that guy? Or do you like their lineup across the board?
I've got 2 for you, one on each side of the ball. One can't happen because I think the 49ers blew it at the trade deadline, and Azeez Ojulari is not on the team. And this was with Nick Bosa. They clearly needed more depth and more juice as a pass rushing team, whether it was a tackle, and they brought in Khalil Davis from the Texans. That was a depth move. That wasn't going to be a difference making move.
He hasn't played at all since.
Right.
I mean, that was the other one too. It's like I kept saying, you don't need a defensive tackle, you need a defensive end, and they're like, no, we need a defensive tackle. You signed a defense, or you traded for a defensive tackle. He can't even get on the goddamn field, and now you're so thin at defensive end that you're probably looking at practice squad guys.
And Robert Beal's not the guy. We already know what
No.
he is. He looks the part, and he's big and fast and stuff. But he couldn't start it in college. Why would all of a sudden he be this pass rushing demon once he got to the NFL? And we've seen what he's been over a couple of years. And whatever, fine.
He gets nothing done. He looks great, but he gets nothing done.
Yeah, and Yetur Gross-Matos, player I loved coming out of college, and he's big and athletic, and he kind of fits that profile of guys the 49ers have done well with, where they play end and they can set the edge, but then they move inside and rush a little bit from there. And look, I'm fine with the Davis trade for depth, and you needed depth in the interior, that's fine. But they needed, and reports were, and I bring up Azeez Ojulari because he was available. Reports were that you could get him for a late 4th or a 5th. The Niners have a comp 4th. You throw a comp 4th for a guy who's got 6 sacks right now, would immediately juice up your pass rush with a healthy Bosa. Now with Bosa out, maybe they didn't think he was big enough and bad enough in the run game, coming off the edge, more of a stand-up style of rusher. I don't know, but they could have gotten that comp 4th back after he signed somewhere else as a free agent.
That was a trade, though. That was a trade. I mean, they could sign Jason Pierre-Paul and cut Robert Beal like today if they wanted to. They're just opting not to.
Right. They might have to do something like that. They
I think you're right.
They needed to be better up front. And so I think they missed an opportunity at the deadline to try to actually get better, more than just depth pieces there. And on offense, I think Feliciano at center is really the only one based on who's available and who's out there. I've been saying this since last year when Christian McCaffrey was, the best offensive player in the league, that they needed to get Mason the ball more. You can't just forget about Jordan Mason. The Niners were better running the ball with Jordan Mason than Christian McCaffrey. So you got to filter in some other guys. Keep Christian fresh. It'll make him better. It'll make the offense better. Getting Mason out there, getting Garendo out there. Look, the Washington Commanders are putting Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler out there all the time at the same time. And their offense is doing big things right now with the rookie quarterback. Put two tailbacks out there if you have to. I know Kyle loves Kyle Juszczyk, but Feliciano at center coming off of IR potentially could give you a little boost at center if you think that's the big problem on the offensive line. But I don't know. The team is the team right now. I don't know how many lineup changes there are out there to be made for Kyle Shanahan.
I hear you. I love yours, by the way. I would definitely go with Feliciano over Brendel. I'm not seeing the genius of Brendel. I definitely would play Garendo and Mason a few more snaps and play your backup receivers a few less snaps. And I definitely would go with D. Winters over Campbell. I think D. Winters had the highest grade at PFF last week. He's small. He falls off blocks. But guess what? He'll be there. He'll close down the space. Right now, the 49ers' biggest issue that I can tell is that you can throw the ball against their linebackers at will. Last week, Geno Smith was 9 for 9 picking on Campbell and Warner Warner's totally gassed. I asked him about it this week. I'm like, how do you, you didn't want to address it. I'm like, how do you rejuvenate in the middle of the year when you get tired? Because he's obviously tired. And he's like, I don't get tired. And he kind of winked. But, it's like, it's obvious. He's totally run down. He made 3 tackles. Name me a game where that guy makes 3 tackles and he plays the whole game if he's healthy. He's not healthy. He's being asked to do too much. He's worn down. And it shows. I mean, they used to have Aziz and Greenlaw and him. Now they just have him, and they missed those other 2 guys badly. All right, let's talk quarterbacks. We only have a couple more minutes. A lot of rumors this week. Niner fans saying, get Daniel Jones. Other people saying Aaron Rodgers is going to finish with the Niners. Are the Niners going to go forward with Brock Purdy, give him a big money extension this offseason, and have him be the guy? Or is Jed going to tell Kyle and John, hey, you know what? We want that 6 Lombardi. You guys have 2 or 3 years to get it done. And they get nervous and say, let's go to Rodgers. Let's go to somebody who's more of a sure thing, because it can't be the play calls. It can't be the offense. It can't be us. It's got to be Brock. So let's change out Brock. What do you think? Are the Niners going to be in camp next year with a significant other quarterback that's not Brock Purdy on the roster?
I mean, I think if I was betting on what's going to happen, Brock Purdy is going to get a huge extension, more than Tua. I don't know if he's going to get 60, but he's going to get a lot of money, and that's the way they'll do this thing. To be honest with you, I hate the finances of the NFL. Like, there's no way a guy like Brock Purdy, who's quarterback of a Super Bowl football team, should be making $900,000. And there's also no way that you should have to pay Brock Purdy, who's, I don't know, 8th best quarterback in the league, 12th best quarterback in the league. He's not top 5, right? I think we probably agree on that. Even people that really love Brock.
I think he's between 5 and 10, to be honest. Maybe 5 and 12, somewhere in there.
So let's say he's the 10th best quarterback in the league. Okay, let's pay him the 10th most money. No, you got to pay him the most money that's ever been paid to a player in the history of the game. So the finances is all screwed up in the NFL. There's no reason he should be making so little right now, and there's no reason you should have to pay Brock Purdy $60 million a year. Because as soon as you start paying Brock Purdy the same amount that the Bills are paying Josh Allen and the Chiefs are paying Patrick Mahomes, you're behind. And the big bonus of having someone like Brock Purdy, a 7th-round pick, as your starting quarterback is you can pay all these other guys. So if you tell me that, hey, you could have Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones or whoever, plus a Bosa and a Trent Williams contract-wise, I mean, you start to have my attention as far as what the options are, aside from just giving all the money to Brock Purdy. I think he'll get paid, but I think there's some conversations to be had, and I think there's going to be a lot of those conversations because Brock Purdy's a really unique situation. And we saw how it went with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that Brock Purdy is so much better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I also think Brock Purdy's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I probably put him closer to, 10, 12 than maybe even 7 and 8 if I'm ranking out quarterbacks. And maybe the rest of the league will tell, you know what, here's what the Niners should do with Brock Purdy. Day one, not in August or September, day one of the offseason, say, okay, Brock, find your trade. And then do the dance with, okay, oh, nobody wanted to pay you $60 million. Okay, let's sign for 45 or, whatever the number ends up being. His agent won't take 45. Or if the opportunity arises and they like, look, we could go bring back Darnold at $10 million a year, stopgap money, $15 million, even $20 million a year is a third of what you'd have to pay Brock Purdy per year. And you can do all these other things at all these other positions with that money, or keep re-signing your own guys and the Demos and the Wards and the Aaron Banks and the Hufangas that are all free agents. So when you start adding it all up, it's not a slam dunk to me that you just sign Purdy and you're rolling. But I think that's what the 49ers will end up doing.
I will say this, though. I do think a great avenue to build your football team is to keep investing in quarterbacks. I mean, think about it. If you invested in Baker Mayfield and somehow he could start to realize some of his talent in San Francisco, if you had a guy to the right, assigned to a right kind of a deal, you might be able to trade him. I mean, Sam Darnold right now looks pretty good. Baker Mayfield looks pretty good. You look around the league, there's so many of these reclamation, project quarterbacks, from Zach Wilson to Daniel Jones to Mac Jones to Justin Fields to, Anthony Richardson to, all these guys that kind of, don't succeed the first time through and all of a sudden they're out there. I'd love to see them go pay Purdy, but then also, either go into the draft and look for another prospect, or get another reclamation project quarterback like a Zach Wilson, build up his value, have somebody who's a little bit more dynamic sitting there waiting than Brandon Allen or Josh Dobbs, especially since it seems like that, some of these teams, quarterbacks go down. Quarterbacks go down and guys get hurt, and it's just the way it is. I'd like to see them, at least dabble in the reclamation project quarterback thing, because they've got an offense and the weapons and a play caller to maybe support that quarterback better than he's been supported in his previous stop. And if you can then flip that quarterback for a second-round pick or a first-round pick, now you're building your team and your roster even better. And they may need to rely on a trick like that, seeing that they're so hugged up against the cap.
Right. I want to add to that, Larry, too.
Yeah.
One thing you can do with a long-term contract with someone like Brock Purdy is, you can backload a contract, and it's something you can get out of after 3 years. If you do end up developing and drafting another quarterback, or you find out he's not really the guy, because, the early money is probably not going to be that huge. And they'll backload some things and try to figure out. And, when they signed Deommodore Lenoir 2029, he became the first player under contract. Now they got $20 million of void money in 2029 that are on the books, but he's the first player that's actually signed under contract. So I'm sure a lot of the money is going to go into the future on a Brock Purdy extension anyway. So maybe it won't show really, because clearly at some point in 2029, you're not going to have McCaffrey or Williams or Kittle on the football team anymore. So maybe that's where it just makes sense for Brock Purdy. It's like, what you have, sign him, and then we'll continue to maybe draft and develop other backups behind him, because you got to get pretty cheap at that point at quarterback. But I want to mention Daniel Jones really quick, because a lot of people have talked about him. I think Daniel Jones is a slam dunk. You sign him the moment that he clears waivers today. And it's a 24-hour waiver period, I believe, which means if they put him in yesterday, then at some point later on tonight, we'll find out if he signed somewhere, cleared waivers, or maybe tomorrow morning. And it's a no-brainer, because Daniel Jones will probably sign for very cheap. And he's clearly, even if you don't like him as a starter, he wasn't as bad of a disaster as Sam Darnold was. You get a little peek at him for a few weeks, even if he's just on the bench and a backup to Brock Purdy, whoever, the rest of the year. But I don't think people would argue that he's at least, even if you think he's a backup quarterback, a top 5 backup in the league. He's better than Brandon Allen and Joshua Dobbs, especially if Purdy's shoulder's really jacked up right now. And you get a comp pick for when he signs that bridge quarterback contract in the offseason. So you get a free draft pick just for signing veteran minimum Daniel Jones right now. So I think it's a slam dunk. Not that Daniel Jones would be a savior for the 49ers, but maybe you get a peek and you realize, man, we like this guy in the draft a little bit. And look, he's just like Sam Darnold. He's someone that can do something for us. Maybe we do want to sign him next year. So you get that advanced look at Daniel Jones, and you get a free comp pick if you let him walk in free agency and let someone sign him to be their 1-year stopgap quarterback at $10 million per year. Mm-hmm. And he's better than the guys that you have a backup quarterback right now behind Brock Purdy.
Yeah,
so
I think it makes sense.
Jones, sign him instantly if you can.
I think it makes sense. He led the Giants to a 9-7-1 record as recently as 2022. So, and he's had 69 NFL starts. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's got potential. Let me hit a couple supers before we jet. Ricky says, seems defenses are daring Brock to throw. If so, how has he stacked up so far? There's been opportunities for Brock to hit an open man, but for whatever reason, has he regressed? Maybe coaching. I think it's a factor of lack of separation, an iffy offensive line, some bad play calls, and some times where he's regressed a little bit and not seeing the field. All-Star Lunas has put some of the rookies in Isaac's fast, Isaac's fast, Jacobs fast, even Willis has got speed. Big Tone says, your buddy Greg Cosell's players are open on film, just not being thrown to like previously in years past, maybe no trust. Well, there's definitely a breakdown in communication there, I'm sure. Brock doesn't have the same kind of reps with some of his backup receivers. That's going to do it for us, because I got to jump over to the radio for a 10 o'clock show in 5 minutes. Brian, good stuff, man. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, we're simulcasting on the OT with BP, where I go overtime, things that don't go on the Locked On channel. So you can subscribe there on YouTube. It's YouTube only, but everywhere you get your podcast, Locked On 49ers, me and Eric Crocker daily breaking down the San Francisco 49ers, and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show as well on the Locked On Podcast Network, breaking down the entire league daily. So find all those YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and you can hit me on Twitter at BD Peacock.
Brian, good stream, man. You're the man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Always fun. Appreciate it, Larry.
Thanks to Better. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to Brian. Join me on KMBR right now for a little bit more Niner talk. Go Niners. Get that win tomorrow at Lambeau.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon'